the last question they asked me, they said, Miss O'Brien, we're going to do a physical search on you. Is there anything that you want to declare? And I looked at the floor. What must have been too long, because they had to ask me again, like, Miss O'Brien. And I looked him right in the eyeball, and my ears were ringing. You know, it's like the loudest silence. And they're like, okay, Miss O'Brien, I'm going to place you under arrest. They put me into a holding cell, and I was formally arrested by an RCMP officer and taken to the Peel police station, where I spent the night sitting there in handcuffs. And like literally my hands and feet were shackled.
You ever think, like, some of the earlier thoughts as you saw some of the kids and some of the things going on around you, right? You form some kind of, sometimes there's a dream like, oh, this is what I'll be in the future. You watch a movie or a cartoon or an animation or something, and it gives us ideas, right, as to what we could be, and we see a life, right? Did you ever have one of those moments where you're like, I'm going to be this when I grow up?
I wanted to be a pilot.
Get out of here.
Yeah, because my grandpa was one.
Okay.
And I also love the story of Amelia Earhart. So the fact that she disappeared. But,
right.
But other than that, she
got up there.
She broke a lot of records. Yeah, she did it. Yeah.
When was this? Was it public school? Was it high
This is
school?
elementary school. Like I was young. Yeah.
Were there others, or was that the only one? And you kind of thought that this is what I'm going to try, or was it one of those far-fetched, like? But you did say your grandfather was one.
Yeah.
So it's like well within reach. Like it's, somebody who's a pilot. It's not just a dream. It could be a plan.
He had his own plane on his property. It was like a little one. He'd take us up in it when we were young. So
right. So it's close enough. You knew you could get somebody to teach you this or what have you. You had experience, and that's what you said to yourself. This is what I'm going to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
As somebody who's, like, just to say, an aspiring pilot, so you're coming up through public school. Obviously, you're not yet thinking, oh, I gotta get this license, or were you actually thinking it?
It actually changed after 9/11 happened. Then I got really scared.
Yeah. Okay.
It was like that day. I was like, oh no.
That'll do it to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then in high school, I think I knew I always wanted to work in business, because I always had jobs when I was younger, like whether it was like distributing flyers or like selling brown like cookies door to door. So I loved like the entrepreneurial aspect. So I knew I wanted to build something.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was going to be.
Yeah.
But my math, I didn't think, like when you're in high school, you're told like you have to have calculus to get into business school, or like, and then you have to, I also loved nutrition and food science, but my chemistry wasn't good enough. So it's so ironic now that I work in like business and food.
Isn't that crazy? I love that. Yeah. The irony of things, right?
Yeah.
And you might not be a pilot on a plane, but you're definitely helping people get from one place to another still, like, and you're carrying them with you, right? So I think a lot of those things have like parallels, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. As you were talking about going through high school, you start thinking about these things.
Are we recording? Or is this pre-trip?
I don't know. We just never know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, now we're going to have to start all over again. Yeah, we just kind of just talk, and then whenever they decide is a good point, and I'm comfortable, we don't know.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it is. It's just casual.
Oh, okay, cool. So it's not like, welcome to the...
No, we do that actually in the end, so believe it or not, because we just don't know what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, okay,
right?
cool. I love that.
Yeah, there's so many aspects.
Like, hey, is this thing on?
Yeah. Did we do a test? Is it working?
Yeah.
But I find that like, because in our lives, there are so many like little twists and turns that I think every single one of those turns is like, I would say, an episode, right? That we really could study and look at and go, wow, this is so cool. So I just never know which twist, which turn is going to be the one that will just carry on down, right? As I was getting to know you better, I was thinking like, wow, there are so many interesting facets to your journey, right? And it could start as early as when you were looking at, hey, I want to be this. And then there is some huge obstruction that comes in the way. And it's like, that could be, it's a theme, like it repeats. Like, I wanted to be a pilot, and then this happened, and then I wanted to be this, but my this wasn't good enough. And so, as you're describing it right now. Yeah. Right? But as that's happening to you at first, you don't ever think to yourself, oh, this is exhausting. I'm tired. I don't know what I want to be. You always had something else that you thought about aspiring to be. Did you ever start looking at things going, well, like, if I can't do that, I can't do that, I can't do that, I'm out of ideas? Or did you always have like the next idea?
I knew that I always liked to control my own lifestyle.
Okay.
So making my own money was always important to me. Like, it wasn't necessarily the career, but like I knew, like, I love my mom. God bless her, mom. Love you. But we always had healthy food in the house. Which when you're young, it's like you don't want the healthy food. You know, you want the passion flakies. You want like what everyone else has.
Yeah.
When you realize, oh my God, like I can't believe parents were feeding the kids.
Yeah, yeah.
You know. So my first job I actually got was so that I could buy my own chocolate bars and just buy like my own stuff that I could
Right.
hide under my bed. But then realizing that working and I could buy my own things.
Wow.
I was like, oh, I like this.
The independence, yeah.
And then I also, I loved basketball. I played basketball growing up, like rep.
Great.
And Vince Carter was my favorite player.
Of course.
So my dad would take me to games. My dad was actually a coach on a couple of years.
Okay.
Anyway, so I always wanted Vince Carter jersey. And they're all, oh, that's $80. That's just ridiculous price, you know?
Right.
And then I saved up for my job so I could just buy that thing that I could myself.
Yeah, and you earned it.
Yeah.
You know, by yourself.
Yeah.
So
I think it's earning it it has been important. It wasn't so much about the job, really. It was about earning it.
yeah, I know exactly what you mean. There's a certain level of fulfillment. You know how much sweat you put into kind of getting yourself there. And it wasn't just, I mean, it's always nice to get a gift here and there.
Oh, for sure.
A little bonus doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's nothing like it when you feel like you've earned it. And in some ways, it actually, as much as the end product, you could call it the jersey, is a nice thing to have. I think there's also just level of fulfillment on the other things you had to do to accomplish on the way. So even to get paid, you still had to do something. Doing those things also is like value, like you're adding value. I agree with you 100%, you know?
Yeah.
So you were already of that mindset so being in business today is like, it's a pretty natural succession.
I guess so.
But you know, along the way, there comes another hurdle. And a lot of times when we're in high school, I'm trying to think back, you hear about it now, young people are facing all kind of stresses. And I think they get a pretty bad rep because they're told, oh, come on, toughen up a little bit. But I think we all had stresses in high school. And the only difference between now and then is that it's just talked about a lot more because we have platforms on which we can talk about it for more people to hear. But it's not like it wasn't stressful or we didn't have, mishaps take place while we're going through high school or through the earlier stages of our life. And quite often it can be some sort of stress induced. It could be something to do with school. It could be something to do with life. And so like you were telling me, you ran into like a little bit of stresses along the way.
Yeah, I was actually very shy. Growing up in elementary school, I spent a lot of time at the library reading books. So when I went to high school, you go from a classroom of 25 people who we've known for 8 years.
Yeah.
And then you're thrown into like, how many 4 different classes a day with,
Yeah.
I can't remember if it was all the same people.
Yeah.
But, and then a sea of,
And everyone's just bigger than you.
yeah. Or like, there's so many more people. There's like 1,500 kids at your high school.
Right.
Who you don't know. So I developed, like, I was very shy. So that's why I kind of got into the weed a little bit.
Right.
Weed and skipping class, and because I just didn't feel like
escape it.
Yeah. I definitely started drinking at probably 14, but I wasn't like an alcoholic.
Sure.
Like I just like would do that so I could figure out how to talk to them because I didn't know. I consider myself pretty awkward for sure.
Right.
Probably still am.
It's amazing how many people just think that of themselves, and we're walking around and everyone just thinks we're normal, right? And they look at us, but when we kind of reflect on ourselves, we're the ones carrying that, right? It's one thing that we think about, like as we're going through these transitions from public school to high school. It would have been nice to have a lesson on stress management, for example, for our level, right? Like we think about reading this kind of things now, but it's something interesting that if we had that tool or that knowledge, because it's just information, knowledge. Now you know, but you know through experience, right? But you get it just to have a little bit more guidance on that would have been really, still would be pretty helpful.
Yeah, I'm actually glad that we didn't have all the technology that we have right now because like I think kids in high school are way more stressed out even than I was.
Yes.
Like I went through normal, like stress is a normal part of life, but I think I actually feel bad because I feel like they're like 10 times more anxious than we ever were.
Well, I think the difference between then and now is that let's just say I'm feeling anxious. The next person's feeling anxious. Everyone's
Yeah.
feeling anxious. Everyone's feeling it. But we never sat and talked about it. We would just think about it, and that's where we were. It adds to our anxiety when we know about a whole bunch of other anxious people feeling anxiety as well. But if we didn't know, we would think we were the only ones. And quite often, I think we went through life thinking we were the only ones. And that's hence why we would feel awkward.
Thrown into debate class and
Right.
you're like, ugh.
Yeah. And then, and that's it. You just move on with it. Right. Except now everyone kind of just has a platform to be able to share that thought. And that's why I think it just seems like there's more of it, but I think it's the same amount. I think all people go through it.
Yeah.
But then as you go through life, right, the things around you start shifting on you, right? Things that are outside of your control. And somehow all of a sudden that gets you like, I mean, when you look at it, you have foundational, pieces to your life. You've got your home, your parents, your school, your friends, right? And these are like foundational pieces. And when they start shifting on you sometimes, do you feel, or in your experience, would you say like that starts impacting, or how does that start impacting you in your case? How do you feel?
I mean, was it them shifting on me or was it me shifting on them?
I don't know. Well, that's really
because they didn't. Their parenting didn't. I don't think their parenting changed when I went to. I think it was my behavior that changed.
Okay.
Right.
So you just chose to change, or like, do you feel something prompted you to change? What was your thought on it?
It was like not knowing how to socialize for sure. So that's when I was like, skipping class, going to parties. But then I also knew. I called it strategic procrastination. I also knew.
Whoa, that's pretty cool.
That I had to get into university, which I knew I could do. Like, all through high school, I still had jobs. I just didn't like going to certain classes.
Right.
And I definitely got into some drugs in grade 10. And that was when, my parents were like, okay, we can't handle this anymore. So you got to make a choice whether you still want to live here or not. And, I made that choice to adjust my behavior, or else I was going to have to go live somewhere else.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the, one of the first things, and then pulled my grades back up, and that's when I got into university. So that's what I called strategic procrastination. It's like grade 9 and 10 didn't really matter, but I guess I still didn't treat them very well.
And then you became part of someone else's strategy.
Yeah.
and your trusting nature kind of then led you into something else that shifted around you from beyond your control as well.
Yeah.
That's what I'm curious about. Like, so when a friend comes along, and this is not to say that we shouldn't trust people, obviously, right? But looking back on this life-changing trip, right? You're being invited to go on a trip just for your own well-being. That's how it starts.
Yeah. And like I saw some red flags, but honestly, when you're in...
Like what's a red flag?
I don't know, just dicey things happening, but everyone does dicey things. You kind of just see them as you're like... So first of all, he owed me money.
Okay.
But like I was like, I don't care. I wasn't desperate for money.
Sure.
So I wasn't like, oh, you have to pay me back, you
Right.
know. I also, so he had like this, the way that I met him was I had a company in Toronto. It was a social media company.
Okay.
And I met him through my work. He was originally one of my customers.
Okay.
So he owed me part of this invoice.
Got it.
And then the second thing that happened was his business was like buying and selling cars. And so I bought this car from him, but then I never got it. And like there was always something wrong with it. So I was like starting to get like really annoyed. And that's when he suggested this trip. All right. So I was like, where's this car? Is this car here? You know what I mean? But then I saw the good things in him as something that mattered the most, which is the fact that he was sober, the fact that he was helping me walk my dog, that I could talk to him anytime. I saw that as taking priority over like, a car or an invoice.
Right.
Because that's like what I cared about the most was like my health going forward.
Sure.
And that's what he was actually truthfully helping me with, was getting on a different path.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't going down this completely dark path where I was going down alleyways and whatever, but I was definitely in a place that I didn't want to be.
Sure.
And he was that person that helped me honestly get out of it for a bit. Right. I'll give him that.
Okay. Wow, that's generous.
For sure.
So you get invited on a trip.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned something about your passport as well.
Yeah.
Because that becomes critical, right, at some point in time.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things. I've had it happen.
Yeah. So it's like when you book tickets, people are like, oh, send me, like, what's your birthday? And it's like, you just send a picture of your passport to book it. And so when he booked that, I found out later on the trip that when he booked those tickets, he had used that information to send to these drug cartels that he owed money to. So
Where you were going.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So all the reason why he couldn't pay the invoices.
And you weren't
made
going
sense.
from like, obviously you weren't just crossing the border and coming back to the States. You were going a long distance.
We went to the Caribbean.
Okay.
Yeah. So to an all-inclusive.
Okay.
And it wasn't until the third day in that his behavior like really started to change. And he's like, "You're not going down to the pool today. Did you really just think this is all fun and games?" And said, "We're here to work." And so I just got in the car with him and not really knowing what this work meant. Like I knew it wasn't good. I knew that something was up. But, we go to this house. It looks like a bed and breakfast from the outside. We go to the inside and there's just bricks and bricks of cocaine in the walls instead of plates and cutlery.
Wow. When the situation just starts changing on you, right? Like you said, like a change in behavior the second, third day, as you were saying. Is there a feeling inside of you to say like, no? Or do you feel more like I got to go along with this now because I'm here? It could get worse if I don't say no,
I don't think my thought process had developed that far at that point because it was so like I was just in shock. I wasn't thinking about what I was going to do. I thought it was kind of a joke. I think like I wasn't afraid.
Okay.
At that point. And then this lady comes out. She's like, "Thank you so much for doing this." And then he looks at me. He's like, "I'm so sorry." And that's when I know that this is not a good situation.
So you get to this house and it's stacked with bricks.
Yeah, but it looks normal from like, when you think of like in movies and you see like people sitting in their big thrones and they got like their chains and they got like their god dogs that are like, rah, rah, rah,
Yeah.
and they got their they're like sitting there like this.
Yeah.
It wasn't like that at all.
Okay.
It was like a grandma.
Oh.
A grandma and her son maybe.
Right.
Or her grandson. So there wasn't really any scary people, right? But then she's like, "Yeah, thank you so much for doing this." I found out later that that's when he booked he owed money to these people.
Okay.
And then he booked the tickets to bring it. So he booked the tickets. They actually paid for this trip, so we would go down and smuggle the drugs back.
Wow.
Like there's a lot of pieces that I'll still never know the truth because I'll never know.
Sure.
But anyway, so that was the Wednesday. And when we get back to the hotel, that's when it all kind of starts sinking in. And I'm just like, what's happening? Like, what's going on? I want to go home.
Yeah. As you're going through this, right?
Yeah.
It's happening fast at the beginning, but you're like thinking a lot now.
Yeah.
You're used to having your independence. You're an earner of your position, right? So you know this about yourself, obviously. Were you along the way? Again, I don't know. I've never been in this situation, so it's hard for me to even imagine. But are you ever thinking about how to get out of this as you're going along, or are you just processing as you're going through it and there's not enough time to think about getting out of it?
So number one is he had my passport on him.
So you're stuck.
So I'm stuck. Number two is like he told me that everyone there is in on it, that I don't want to mess with these people. This is all like once we get back.
Right.
This isn't in front of these people.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. At that time, in front of these people, you're not aware of this.
Yeah.
Are you thinking about, I'll jump out of this car here, I'll unlock the door? What, like?
No, you're in St. Lucia, like the middle of a jungle. Where are you going to go?
You can't. Right. So it's not.
Like no one's coming to save you.
Okay.
Right? Like you're,
Okay.
and due to the nature of the corruption in these countries, whether it's true or not,
Right.
the only person that I know down there is him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and then when we get back to the hotel, he's telling me that everyone's in on it. I might not even be able to get home by like trying to rat on the operation. Right?
Right.
So, yeah. And then that's when he tells me, oh, he's done this before. He tries to get me excited about like doing it. Like I was saying, it was so easy.
Okay.
Yeah. That's when I left the resort. I just went off by myself for like, not for a couple hours each day. I didn't stay overnight anywhere else, but I just kind of, and that's when I engaged in extremely heavy drinking because I just wanted the rest of those 2 days to end. But the Friday is like when they pick us up.
And here you are also trying to, during that time,
yeah,
you're struggling, but you're working hard on getting yourself sober and staying on that path. And when that happens, you're even in a more sort of vulnerable state as well.
Yeah.
2 days can seem like a very long, is a very long time.
Mm-hmm. I just want to go home.
Yeah.
So.
And then you start making your trip to come back. Oh, again, I'm just so curious. Like, is it like you said? It's not like in the movies at that point, with the grandma. Is it like in the movies at that other point where you're strapping the stuff on and you're? What are you thinking to yourself at that point in time? Like, I'm going to get caught. I'm not going to get. I want to get caught.
I want to get
not get
honestly,
caught.
I want to get
What are
caught.
you thinking?
Whenever I do something wrong, and like I know I'm doing something wrong, it's like I want to get out of. It's like I want to get caught, but I also know that it's not that I want to get out of it. It's just like I don't want to get away with it because I don't want to have to do this again.
Right. And the good thing about getting caught is that you're not the one who ratted anyone out.
No,
Somebody,
exactly.
right? So you got connected back with the right side that way.
Yeah. Exactly.
Get
So some people are like, oh, call the authorities. It's like if I blow up this operation,
Yeah.
you know how dangerous that is?
Right. And it's not only
By
your
yourself
life.
in a foreign country?
Right.
Like,
They don't
as
usually just
if.
come after you.
Or no, they had all my family information. I didn't know this world, right? Like ignorance was not bliss.
Right.
So, and then the Friday, so these people actually pick us back up.
When you got on the plane or on your way there, okay, so you're now kind of going from the hotel
Back to the house to put it back on. Because
Okay.
over the last 2 days, the lady has to make this customized like drug smuggling outfit.
Okay.
I call it Spanx for
Fashion.
smugglers.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's like a pair of bike shorts with like a pocket in the front, and a pocket in the back,
Okay.
kind of like a kangaroo pouch.
Okay.
But she had to take my measurements that first day to know
Wow.
what size to make them.
Wow.
And of course, they're not just going to leave us in a hotel with all these drugs.
Right.
So that's why they kept them. They picked us up. We had to go back to this house, put this on with the drugs in it. And she's like, everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be fine. As if they like knew everyone at the airport. Like, I just want to go home.
Mm-hmm.
So he's telling me, you better do this. And she's telling me, everything's going to be fine.
Wow.
I just don't really know what to believe anymore other than I just want to go home.
Right.
So, and he has it too, by the way. It's not just me.
Yeah.
So we leave, and the first thing's like a metal detector. You walk through it. And then you get on the airplane, and it's like the longest and shortest plane ride of my life.
Right.
And because I was kind of freaking out over the last 2 days, like I didn't want to, he's like, okay, like you can take them off at Pearson, put them in your backpack, and I'll go through customs with them. So that brought me a little bit of relief.
Okay.
But when we land at Pearson, and I'm about to go to the bathroom, he grabs my arm. He said, oh, it's too late now.
Yeah.
So he never planned on letting me take those drugs off. So that's when obviously I was just riddled with even more anxiety, which probably was another indicator. The body language
Sure.
is the loudest language in the room.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think when we landed to Pearson. Nowadays it's very different. You go through the machines, but back then it's kind of like you're a more face-to-face interview.
Yeah, well, it's actually, the machine's only in the departure, really, not when you land.
Oh, no?
Yeah.
Back in the day, I just remember when I was coming back in, you're still going through immigration, you're still going through potentially customs, but that was some time ago maybe.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, when we landed, like, yeah, you just go through the checkpoint, you talk to the officer, they give you that piece of paper.
Right.
You grab your bags. And then there's one more checkpoint that you have to go through. And so you have that piece of paper with the number on it, right? And it was 2015. So
this is after you get your baggage, right?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. This is after he's told me you're not going to the bathroom. So now I'm sitting there waddling in this thing that I'm pissed.
Mm.
And so I'm walking behind him. All these things that I'm doing, I'm not even doing them intentionally. I'm not going to cause a scene, but like I'm walking behind him. I'm not making eye contact with him. Those are all things that were in the report that were signs of me knowing something was wrong.
Right.
But I didn't even know that I was setting off those alarms.
Sure.
Right. Which is actually good because like my body was doing the natural thing.
Right.
Right. So, and then we go to the last checkpoint, and then you have to give them that card with a number on it. And they say we have to go right. And we're going into secondary. And that's when I knew. I didn't feel relief yet. I felt okay. You know, I knew that I wasn't going to lie.
Mm-hmm.
But I also knew that I wasn't going to be like, help me at the airport. Because again, if I botched this, those are someone else's drugs. It's $100,000. Or no, I think it's over 200,000. It was 2-point-something kilos worth of cocaine.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was around, this is how inexperienced I was. I don't know the street value, but it was over $100,000. So if it was my responsibility for losing that, It's dangerous.
Sure.
So I just get questioned by the officers. And at this point, I'm done.
What are like the series of questions that like, is it typical or was it?
Well, hi, Miss O'Brien. Where are you coming from? How do you know this person? What do you do for work?
Right.
What do you file on your taxes?
Okay.
And then they asked me if I like to drink. I said, yeah. They're like, oh, do you like to like party? I'm like, yeah.
Okay.
I was even honest about that.
Yeah.
And then the last question.
Did you feel like you were sweating at that point in time? Like you're being asked questions, or was it like just, were you a bit calmer?
I was calmer.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
I'd be freaking out. I don't know what I'd be doing. Right.
because I just think at this point I just knew. I was like, I knew that I was going to tell the truth because I wasn't going to lie to a federal agent, and everything that this guy told me before about it was all a lie.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that I had to go with my gut and like with the person that I want to be, which is honest, because he obviously didn't know what he was doing.
Right.
And I knew that lying to a federal agent was definitely a crime.
Right. 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 That's, you had control over that.
Yeah. And so the last question they asked me, they said, Miss O'Brien, we're going to do a physical search on you. Is there anything that you want to declare? And I looked at the floor. And I looked at the floor what must have been too long because they had to ask me again, like, Miss O'Brien. And I looked him right in the eyeball and my ears were ringing. You know, it's like the loudest silence.
Wow.
Right? And then I looked him right in the eye and I said, yes. And I actually felt, that's when I felt a sense of relief. Didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
I felt a sense of relief because I thought I was going to be able to go home.
You're on the
I
other.
didn't think I'd be in a chair 10 years later telling you that I went to prison.
Yeah.
Here we are.
But at that moment in time, like you actually almost even feel, would you say safer?
I did.
Really?
100%. Yeah, and I was safe that I was actually away from him. You know, I wasn't gonna be like, he did it, you know, like, because again, like, I don't want to rat someone out. I don't know the extent or the depth of this scheme other than it's very dangerous, right?
Right.
So I just was happy to be safe. And in Canada, to be honest.
Yeah, right, back home.
Yeah.
Anyway. So you said yes, and then?
Then they're like, okay, Miss O'Brien, I'm going to place you under arrest. They put me into a holding cell where then they tested the drugs, confirmed what it was. Then I was formally arrested by an RCMP officer and taken to the Peel police station where I spent the night. And then I had to go to the provincial jail called Vanier for the weekend. And over the weekend, they called my parents, who then I would see on Monday in the courtroom, shackled, hand to foot. So their honor roll student who had graduated from, you know, at that time, university with honors, sitting there in handcuffs. And like literally my hands and feet were shackled.
You were obviously thinking about seeing them as the day comes. And I imagine you're thinking about how disappointed they might be and so on. Or what were you thinking about what they would be feeling or what you would be thinking?
I just wanted to tell them what happened. I think, you know, I was still very confused. Like I didn't plot this thing, so I didn't know like what the repercussions were. Right. I didn't.
Right. Don't know what's coming.
I just thought I could just go home, you know? And then, you know, when I was sitting in jail, I was like, okay, I'm sitting in jail. Still didn't really.
You don't have representation with you yet.
No. People were like, girl, what are you doing in here? Like, what? Like, what? Like, people thought I was like a fish out of water. Because I was just sitting there just like chilling. You know, I mean, there was just fights going on, and I'm just like, somehow became like the class clown over like the weekend.
Wow.
It did not even sink in. Yeah. But that's when I realized it sunk in when, you know, I'm being shackled and then I have to go on house arrest and I have to like move back in with my mom, move my stuff out of Toronto. I can't leave the house.
What was when you first saw your parents in the courtroom as you're coming out? You said you hadn't made eye contact with them. You know, you said it earlier yourself. You tend to look down, right? When your reaction is to look down because, you know, you're feeling something's not right. That's the natural.
I had to look I owed them that.
You looked them in the eye.
You
looked at the officer in the eye. So,
yeah.
You know, you looked at your parents. Well, you weren't looking at him like rebelliously, obviously.
Yeah. But it was I owed them that. And I knew that.
It's amazing. Like I tell my kids, like, hey, it's unconditional love, whatever it is, I'm still here, right? No matter what. But even in that moment, you don't know what they're thinking, you're thinking, and so when you go, you're finally now after that hearing, I guess it's called, or that
Yeah, there's so
proceeding.
many terms. I couldn't even keep up with all the
Yeah.
different kinds of.
But then you're let go to go with them. There's a bond or whatever, a bail.
Yeah.
And then you go home with them. What are the first things you want to say to them, or that you got to actually talk about?
I think I just told them what happened, that I just wanted to go home. They had my dad brought on one of his friends who was a lawyer, because again, they didn't know what to do.
Right.
Like we didn't know. Nothing like this had ever happened.
Right.
There were definitely some incidents in high school with the cops and substances, but nothing of this magnitude.
Right.
So it was all like, that's also what brought on, a lot of the stress was just the uncertainty. We didn't know. And I like felt so bad because I was like, are they at risk? Right? Because now I lost these drugs. These drugs have been confiscated.
You're still thinking about that.
Yeah. I didn't know. So like, that's why when I was on house arrest, like those 2.5 years, the first year I was just living in excruciating paranoia until I was able to get some information and do a little research, realizing that what I had was actually nothing. They're not going to do anything for that amount. It's a cost of doing business. And sometimes these people that orchestrate these trips, they'll put like someone like me who has no idea what they're doing, who's bound to get caught, on a flight with someone who has 10 times that amount in a suitcase or something like that, in their carry-on. Right?
Okay.
Or on their body, they got 10 packs, right? Someone that's like, someone that's maybe a little bit more heavy setting. Because I was little. I was like, what are you doing putting these pounds, like, like a Kleenex box shoved under my shirt? So they have like professionals that have actually done this multiple, that will smuggle 10, 20 kilos over. No problem. Well, I'm on the flight. And then sometimes they'll even call in. They'll call in on me. Like the people that put the drugs on me will call in. Yeah. And apparently this also came in as facts from evidence. He was being watched this whole time because he was doing a lot of these trips. So I don't know how deep. He was obviously into something very deep.
Right. So there's your parents, obviously, in some ways you can feel the support through them, and having that support around you, as much as you're going through paranoia or whatever the stresses you're going through, does help. But then beyond that circle, there are people who you're not allowed to make contact with, right? You're restricted with
Mostly
where you
just
can
him.
go.
It was only him.
Okay.
But to be honest, I did talk to him because I was frightened, and I was like, I didn't have anyone else to talk to. Because he told me everything's going to be okay. Of course, I believed him again, And he's like, I'll pay for your lawyer fees. None of that ever happened. And it wasn't until like I went to prison as a kid. No, it was before I went to prison. But there was definitely a month and a half that I talked to him after, because I was in an awful state. I didn't know who else to talk to. I was scared that someone was coming after me. Like, he was the one that helped me tell me like that no one was going to actually come after me.
See, like at first that seems odd that you would do that, but it makes sense in a way as you describe it, because that's your connection to whatever truth you might possibly find out anyway. So it's still your only way to reach an understanding and to have a level of security. You're still not getting the security you want, but it's your only pathway to it. Nobody else is going to tell you anything else about what's going on, or could tell you who knew what was going on. So it does make sense.
Yeah.
When you're in that moment, right? You're thinking about it. It must be hard because on some level you had kind of like no idea this was all happening, and while it was happening, it was well beyond, your control to do these things. But from another perspective, from somebody who just read the headlines on Emily, oh, she went on this trip, she came back, she got caught. And you're not allowed to also, during this process of the trial, talk to people and tell them anything. You're probably cautioned not to.
Your voice is taken. Right. But like, luckily there was no headlines, because another thing I found out.
Well, headlines amongst your network. Every day.
Right? Oh, yeah. The good headlines came later.
Right. Oh, is that right, huh? Okay. Like, what were the headlines?
When I shared the story on my own free will. I knew that I was going to tell the story, how it happened, because I knew that if I didn't, it would just eat me alive and I wouldn't actually be able to help anyone. Right. But I wasn't going to let anyone else tell it for me. I wasn't going to let anyone else take my agency and ownership of the story.
Good. Great.
So,
along the line, until that time that you could tell your story, people kind of had a story concocted in their head about who you are and the judgment that you end up facing, or the bias that you end up facing, or whatever it is that comes your way, you know, what do you do to kind of, because you still can't say anything at that point in time. How do you cope? How do you work your way through that? How did you do it?
Not well. I'll be honest, not well in the beginning. Not well at all. I was drinking by myself in my mom's attic, you know? And I hated that. I hated it so much. And, you know, I was on house arrest, and I went out to smoked cigarettes at the time. And I went out to get cigarettes, and it was Frosh Week because I was in Hamilton, so we live near McMaster University. And there's there's cops just, search, just make sure that nothing's going on. So I took my car. But again, this is all supposed to happen. I took my car, went out to get cigarettes. Cops just searched my plates. She's on house arrest. Got her booked again. I had to spend the night in jail. My mom bailed me out, and then my lawyer's like, Emily, like, we know that you're a good kid and you're struggling right now, but if these rules, they are really tough because we know your character, but you just have to go with it. Like, it is a form of tough love, because if something like this happens again, they're not going to let you out. And I was like, okay, that was kind of like the turning point. That was when I was like, enough of this emotional squalor, enough, because I was mad. I wanted revenge.
Yeah.
I felt very misunderstood for a very long time. Yeah. I was like, I'm tired of feeling like this. I am not this person. I was like a happy kid, I loved people and I loved doing good things and traveling the world. Like, this situation was turning me into like a gremlin version of myself that I hated, that I knew that I wasn't. So that's when I was like, enough of this. That was a turning point. And that's when I was like, I'm going to make my family so proud again, because I owed them that. I'm going to make myself proud again.
Just like that.
No, it was always after a year and a half, like a year of like feeling like,
well, no, it's fine. It's, yeah.
Yeah, it definitely was an instant, but it was getting arrested that second time, talking to my family, talking to my lawyer, hearing that, and being like, yes, okay, that's it. It was that day.
Had you thought about it like that before that day? Like, I'm going to make them proud. I'm not, or was it more, this is terrible. It feels lousy, and I'm angry, and stay that. Like sometimes you just got to go through it. You got to get mad long enough. You got to cry long enough.
Roll around in the dirt.
Yeah, as you
telling you,
right? Because while we're going through it, I always wonder, when we're going through that year and a half, as you're talking about. Sounds like a year and a half. Okay, but that's a really long.
About a year. I'm trying to think. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even if it was a week, it's forever when you're going through it, and as you're going through it, there's no real. Like today, you say, I have a hard stop at this time. Something's going to end, something else is going to start. You have no idea when it's going to end at that time.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like you're on this hamster wheel. Like I don't know how do you. It's like a vortex of. You're like a black hole. That's what you're in.
Yeah.
Blackout hole. Cause that's what,
yeah.
Because I couldn't go to work. Like, I could go to work, and I had my own company. And this is kind of where I started to get creative after the second time I got arrested, because I was like, okay, I have a social media company.
You went back to just working on your work while you're home, right? Is that kind of what you did?
Yeah. I had to do like a lot of I went to like some programs and stuff like that my lawyer recommended.
Okay.
Just to help like not amplify my case, but like substantiate my character.
Right.
And yeah, so I had a social media company, but then when I was driving, I was just paranoid every day. And I wasn't actually allowed to even go to the gym. Like, part of your house arrest, you're not even allowed to physically exercise. And I was like, this is not good for you. So I ended up like finding a client that was a gym so that I could go and take content for them and work out. Oh. So it's like so I'd go to work. Right. So then I would also be able to build my mental health as well, that for some reason I wasn't allowed to do. And I was like, it's like, no, you can't exercise? Like, what are you supposed to... Right. So I got creative in a good way and started to build up clientele and I got a basketball team as a client. So I would go to basketball games. Like, it was great. And like, work with players, and that's when I started to use my entrepreneurship skills to my benefit, and also to benefit my own, not just like my business and like the people I serve, but like my comeback. Like, I needed, like, the law wasn't going to do it for me. Right.
So you never at any point in time, did you ever feel like my life is over?
In the beginning.
Because you're fighting.
Yeah. And people would tell me that. But then when anyone else tells me what my life's going to be, that's when it really starts to irk me. So I was like, oh no, I'm too rebellious for this. Right. And that definitely did come from certain people. And I know I didn't really expect it from the people that it came from, which I think that's why it hurt the most. And like
Right.
a lot of people would see all the trips that I took, because my degree was in international development. And so I took my first trip abroad when I was 18 to volunteer.
Sure.
And then I went to Peru, and then I lived in Indonesia. And I was always going to these countries to like build projects and do things. And so some people were so quick to be like, oh, you must have been smuggling drugs the whole time. And I was like, how dare you? You know, like, so, but again, that kind of just lit the fire to prove that they were wrong.
Um, yeah, just I'm just kind of thinking it through as you're describing it, and you're going over periods of like a year and a half, like in 3 seconds, right? And you're thinking about, oh yeah, this is just what happened. During that time, though, like you talked about, there were some fallbacks. You know, like when you went, the cop thing with
Cups and cigarettes.
with the cop and cigarette thing. You know, did for some, right? Like, I consider you in some ways fortunate because you had this attitude to fuel you. You had this fire. I'm going to prove them wrong. You didn't do the give up, I'm powerless feeling, even though there were naysayers. And naysayers can really, they show up at the most inconvenient times, right? So
Oh, you're telling me.
you're already feeling lousy, and then you got this added to you, as if they know, right? Like what it's like to carry that weight. But how many instances would you say this happened? Did this only happen rarely, where you're feeling like the give up moment, or was it just once or twice? Like how did it go for you? Because a lot of times when we get into a fall down or a situation like this, even if it's beyond our control, and you know, like you said, you try something and it doesn't work the first time to try and get up and going, right? At the same time, you're somewhat at your in a weaker state because you're up in the attic, and that weakens you too, right? Like emotionally as well. So when you're coping in these other ways, they don't necessarily get you through easier. They actually make you a little weaker.
Yeah, and you're also mortified, like,
Yeah.
and humiliated. Like I felt like I embarrassed my family, so I didn't feel like I should be anywhere else but the attic.
Right? Like you feel like,
I
yeah,
needed
you
to
deserve
crawl. Yeah, yeah.
right? So you stay there, you wallow in it.
Rapunzel.
Right? Right? So it's not always on the first try or the second or the third that it ends up working itself out. And when you go after clients, not all of them say, yeah, hey, Emily, here, take my business. Right? There's still more, not failure, but like, outcomes that are like, oh man, that didn't work out. Oh, that didn't work out. And it can really spiral, like you said, like a vortex. And all of a sudden it spirals fast. What I'm curious about is that happened to you, but it doesn't seem like it happened, at least from what I'm seeing here. It just happened a little bit. Like for some people, they stay down there and then they just go deeper.
It's too boring down there.
It's too boring.
Yeah,
Is that what you would say?
It's too, yeah, I'm not. I was born a happy kid, and I was like, I got bored of feeling like that. I was like, stop this. Like, this is enough. Like, you have one life. You have like people that love you and care about you. And again, like looking back on all the old family photo albums and seeing all the good things that we did, all the accomplishments, all the trophies that I had from like sports, and knowing that I could put effort into things. That's when I was like, sometimes you do have to look back on the past.
Yeah.
So, and that's honestly was a driving force.
After you went through your prison term, so this is before on your way to getting a sentence, then, right? And then you get put into prison.
Yeah. I pled guilty for 4 and did the mandatory minimum of 4 years.
Okay.
So number one, I got 4 years, which is the mandatory minimum because that was the amount. I pled guilty very early on. Like, say, when I got questioned, I said yes right away.
Right.
If they had searched me, if I said no, they searched me and they found it, it would have been a different story.
Sure.
And then I pled guilty very early, like when it came to the charges. And I also, I only had that one little slip up on bail. So I wasn't like high risk and I wasn't a violent offender. So all those, and I also worked a lot on my house arrest to like do these programs and present things for the court to prove that, this is why I should get this sentence. But it was still the mandatory minimum. So that's why.
It's interesting that by not trying to get out of it, it helped you to get out of it better or quicker. You didn't try to get away with it. That's just like seems to like really be obvious right now, because often when we're in a little bit of trouble, we feel like, okay, let's just try to kind of find our way on this side of the law, right? And just get away with it. And you never tried to get away with it. You looked them in the eye and what you did. And that ended up being your saving grace. Not only from the legal point of view, but even for yourself, would you say?
Yeah.
Which is more important.
That's why I felt a sense of relief. It like felt so good to just tell them the truth.
Huh. Okay. So the judge kind of passes this sentence, right? I'm curious about that point.
Yes. So it was a joint submission between the Crown and my lawyer.
Okay.
And often when there's a joint submission, the judge will go along with it. And so, yeah, by that time, I knew that it wasn't just like, here's your sentence, you're going to jail today. Like the way that it goes is like you submit this thing and then you have an idea of how long you're going to go for. So I knew 4 years. I also studied, like, I put all my education into practice and studied the prison system and where I was going.
Okay.
And how long I was going to go for. So I was like, okay, if I'm going to go away for a year, that's like, you're eligible for day parole after like a quarter of your sentence. And so I was eligible for a year. So like people go away for a year all the time, whether it's a sabbatical, maternity leave, rehab, school. So like, I wasn't going to go on maternity leave, but like I was definitely going to go away for rehab and school and a sabbatical. Right. So I kind of reframed it as that.
Right.
And I knew that the world wasn't going to end. Like it was going to be really good for me and what I needed.
Sometimes when people go into prison, the influence of what's around there, I don't know. Maybe I watched too many movies. But when we were in prison, somebody said, maybe I get this from Shawshank Redemption, right? He said that, he says, I was an honest person on the outside. And then when I came to prison is when, I learned, I did this. So did you find that experience, or what was the first year like then?
I definitely learned a lot about the drug trade after the fact.
Is that right? They're like, oh, you did it wrong, Emily. You should not look down.
No, I actually met a lot of people in there that were just really like me. I mean, women offenders are a lot different than male offenders.
Okay.
And so like where I was in a medium security. So I was also and I also wasn't violent. So there's different categories of people that commit crimes.
Got it.
And so I was in a medium security facility of people that, had committed, some of them had committed violence, because if you commit violent crimes, you have to spend a certain amount of time in the max before you can go down to medium. So I'd always met people that had committed murder, that had, some of the most notorious people that Canada knows I've probably met in 2015 and lived with.
How old are you at this time?
I was 25. No, I was 25 when I got arrested.
Okay.
26, 27, 28. Yeah, so, and then I spent 2.5 years on house arrest. So I went into prison at just about 29. Then I turned 30 in prison. I spent my 30th birthday in prison. Yeah.
And, you said you got the minimum term. So you're meeting people that are serving longer terms than you. Mm-hmm. And what's the word? Being institutionalized, right? They kind of get, that's the setting now they're in for a long time, and they assimilate to it. Mm-hmm. Would you say like you could feel the melting pot culture of assimilating into a system like that, or into a culture like that?
Yeah, and I think it definitely depends on the charge. Like, so people with my charge, and there was like a third of the population at the time, was people that had been convicted of importing, and people that are convicted of importing rarely reoffend.
Okay. Because
they're just like the lowest hanging fruit. They go in, they're like, holy crap, like, and they never go back. But then there are also people, that their families want them to engage in crime, or, they don't have the support systems, that other people do. And it's really all about the support systems that's gonna help you. I mean, it's not completely necessary. Like, I know people that have been to prison and had nothing and still built a business. Like, luckily over this journey of building Comeback Snacks, I've been able to meet people from all over the world who like spent time in isolation and still managed to build a business and didn't have a family. So it's like, but I also really recognize the fact that my family was there for me, and it was not easy.
No, because when they're there for you emotionally, but they're not there with you physically. You're essentially.
Yeah, and it was tough love for sure. Like, I'd hurt them, and they were done. They were kind of, they like, I don't want to say they like. I kind of, you say unconditional love, but I actually think it does have conditions. Like, I think you can't just abuse people that give you love all the time. You have to like love them back and treat them with the respect and the dignity that they deserve.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was your first years.
Yeah, my first year, and then I got day parole. And then I lived in a halfway house for 6 months, and then I lived the rest on full parole, which means I get to live on my own, whether it's with someone or.
When you were there, you said you studied before getting in. What were you studying while you were in?
Well, I read 82 books. I wrote letters to those authors. Like I watched Dragon's Den like every single day. I didn't like think popcorn was even going to be a part of it, but food was something that brought people together inside prison. And we all talked about our insecurities and as we were sharing these meals, and one of them was employment. And, I realized that we were all human and we all just wanted second chances, but society kind of condemns you, even though a lot of people are like 1 second away from committing a crime themselves. Like if you're texting, if you're a law-abiding citizen normally, you're texting on your phone, you crash into someone, kill them, you're going to prison. Meanwhile, so you never committed a crime in your life.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So it's like these certain like emotional decisions that can lead to like, obviously that's different than like, drug trafficking or something like that. But there are a lot of crimes that are like crimes of passion that like the average person would never think they'd ever do.
Right.
And so I just realized that level of human, it's all about being human and forgiveness and forgiving yourself, working hard to take accountability. It's not just like, oh, poor me, slap on the wrist. It's like, no, you have to work hard to repair those relationships.
Right.
And then you can really feel your comeback. So back to the employment thing. Yeah, we talked about employment and how getting a job was going to be hard because people didn't want to hire someone with a criminal record even after you're done your time. And I was just like, popcorn was a popular prison snack. And we'd all put our own little recipes on there. And then I was just like, I'm going to start a popcorn company and prove everyone wrong and prove ourselves right and hire people. And it just started with an idea and popcorn kernels and stamps. And now we hire the formerly incarcerated and 1,000 stores across Canada.
1,000 stores across Canada is where your product is being sold. I mean, there's more questions that I have that I want to know as to how you actually did that, because even people without all the setbacks that you've had, right, and all the fall downs on the way, even without that, people don't get that far. 1,000 stores. That's amazing. And not only doing it, but I have an HR company, and when you think about talking about hiring good help, you hear the saying, good help is hard to find. And here you are, you just said it so naturally, you're hiring people with a record. You're specifically doing that to get them that chance. That nobody necessarily gave you either, and now you're not only doing that, but you're taking groups of people who have come from a background like that or have a record like that, and helping them start their own businesses.
Yeah, because again, finding a job with a record is hard, but you have these skills and talents and traits, transferable skills that can be put into
definitely transferable skills.
Yeah, like you have resilience. You can say if you've got caught up in the drug smuggling world, you know how to take money, you know how to count money, you know how to do collections, you know how to market yourself, have a good product, quality control.
Quality control.
Right? Like there's all these things
that's true.
Right? If you can mess with numbers and commit fraud, you can probably find fraud. So it's like there's all these,
like the Catch Me If You Can movie.
Yeah.
That's how that ended up, right?
Yeah.
But
I think just like the tenacity and like the hard work, because once you get that chance, you don't want to lose it. I think that's the most important thing.
Do you ever have a tough time along the way when you're talking to people who have a record and getting them to come and develop themselves further? Do you feel that sometimes they just get also stuck in this, like, I can't do it? And then you're having to convince them that they can. You that's what I'm saying, is you didn't get stuck there too long. You're like, I'm getting up. I'm doing this. Do you feel that people stay down even when, or want to stay down, or feel broken or lose confidence?
Yeah, I think it all depends on their situation. I was very aware that a good environment with like community and doing things that would push me forward were essential. I don't know what goes on in other people's lives. Like, I don't know, like about their living situation or whatever. So like sometimes external factors that I don't have any control of can bring people down, or other like obligations, right? Like it might be hard to start a business while you just had a kid or something like that, right? Like, so there's a lot of things, just trying to make ends meet. Like you need to, before you, like even before I started Comeback Snacks, I still had a job at the gym. So it's like you need to have that kind of like stability, or even if it's like stability from substances, right? Because often there's a high rate of like substance use in business, right?
Yeah.
Like whether you're on Wall Street or like Bay Street,
Yeah.
like or the alleyway.
Yeah.
It's like there's people do drugs everywhere.
Right.
And so like when I'm teaching people how to start a business, it's like you don't want people to fall back into that or into it if they haven't before.
You seemed very comfortable with hard love being given to you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that you have to sometimes give out the hard love to the people who you're trying to help?
Mm-hmm.
Give me an example.
Oh, the other day, like sometimes one of my staff
Like you
would
seem
ask
like
me
so
for one of my
calm
staff-
and cool and collected.
Yeah.
I'd like to. What hard love comes from Emily?
Like I had someone that worked with me for a while, and then I could see that, one of her partners was kind of taking advantage of her, and then she would ask me for money, and like it just became this cycle, and I was like, I can't. And then, she wouldn't show up to work, but still be asking for money. And I knew it was him,
Yeah.
but it's like, I'm not going to support that.
Yeah.
So it's like I unfortunately had to let her go because, I will hire you for a job that you can do, but I can't be taken advantage of like that. And sure, I'll give you like $100 if you need, but like when it becomes a cycle and a pattern and nothing's changing in your life, I know the source, and it's your job to deal with that source.
Right. And there are far too many people now counting on what you're doing to put that all at risk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What would you say then to someone, right? That's always one of my last questions I think about. You probably thought about this a lot as you talk to people who you're helping. But there are people who are right now maybe in the middle of all of this and don't really have the support or don't really see the light at the end of the tunnel and don't want to read books and don't want to watch Dragon's Den, right? And just they don't have that. The desire level, the distress level is so high that the desire level is really suppressed.
Mm-hmm.
What's your advice? I mean, you've been there yourself.
Just one foot in front of the other. That's what it starts with, one step. And you don't have to, like, you have to realize that how precious life really is and that we only have one, and everyone has something to offer the world and can bring something really good into the world. And it doesn't happen in a day, but if you just put one foot in front of the other, then you're going to start to build yourself up. So it just starts with a step.